Welcome back to the channel, folks, and to another battle report. We're going to do another desert game. You know, we've got the desert compilation coming out, so we thought it would be worthwhile just getting another game in just now. Maybe not anymore till the books are out, but we'll get another game in. Now, we're going to be playing a particular mission, playing Scouts Out, because this weekend, the weekend you'll be seeing this going out, I'm actually going to be playing as a remote player for the first time, which is going to be a bit weird for me. But I'll be playing on Valley Gaming against Rob. Now, I don't know if any of you guys have seen Valley Gaming before. I reckon most of you have. But if you have not, check them out. Our game will be maybe out in a week or two. But they've got lots and lots of games that you can go and have a look at. And check them out, subscribe, give them some support, because they're doing a lot to help build the Flames of War community on YouTube. Now back to this game. It's going to be a 8th Army against Panzer Army Africa kind of game. Not so much the El Alamein type lists with the short infantry platoons. It's going to be put together for the Germans using the Cross of Iron book, and for the British the Armoured Fist book. So let's go over, take a look at the lists and get started. Here is Brian's list, and it's built around the Panzer III formation. So we'll go through that first, because as you may know, there are so many different ways you can kit out these Panzer IIIs. None of them are up armoured. What he's gone for is a HQ with short 75 mils, and then a platoon of 4 with short 50 mils, and a platoon of 4 with 4 long 50s. So as I've said before, there's the long and the short of it, and that is that's the main formation, to be honest. Everything else is support, but he's got himself quite a tough formation. It'll take a bit of breaking, especially with the last stand of 3 up. Then in support, for some extra anti-tank punch, there are 3 Marders with their anti-tank 12, some artillery and possibly smoke, at least for one turn. There's the 3 Nebs. Now they're obviously not in very deserty bases, but I don't have any with the desert folk, so they'll just have to do the now. A platoon of, let me think now, these are just Grenadiers, he says, just Grenadiers. Oh, by the way, an observer, Panzer II. And 2 platoons of armoured cars, 1 of each, and each platoon has the anti-tank rifle, the SB, ZB, whatever it is, 2.8 centimetre. So there you go, there's something in there. No, it's very much a tank force, a mobile force that he's after, but there's something in there to hold ground. These can hold as well as attack. They can certainly attack, they can assault, and these guys can be running around doing stuff whilst the artillery is supporting. So there you go, Brian's Africa Corps. So my 8th Army force is built around a Grant formation. Now this Grant formation is the only formation in the force. If I wanted another formation in, it could be tanks, but you know, it could for instance be Crusaders. You know, but folks, once you get into reserves and you've got a lot of Crusaders off the table, and they're in platoons of 3, or even Grants in platoons of 3, but the Crusaders being so cheap, it's more relevant to them. You might have 3, 4, 5, who knows how many platoons in reserve. And especially if it's delayed reserves, it takes ages to get them on the table. So another tank formation wasn't really an option. And as far as the infantry goes, well, I could have taken another formation, but then I would have to drop a powerful artillery force. Now these guys are quite an expensive artillery unit. A mortar unit is cheaper, but these guys are better in certain respects than a mortar unit. So I decided just to go with one formation. So I'll just go through it quickly. HQ of 3, 2 platoons of 3. But remember guys, these are got a 5 up last stand. So I've really got to keep my formation HQ close to whatever platoons are on the table at any given time, just in case, or maybe not so much just in case, but when it happens, they're going to need that reroll, I think. And then supporting them, we've got a platoon of infantry. This is the ordinary infantry, not the motor rifles. So it's quite a decent sized platoon, and they're careful, they're good in assault, they could get up to a bit of mischief. 4 anti-tank guns, anti-tank 9. These guys are, let me think now, they are careful and they are fearless, so they're not necessarily going to run away easily, I say. We'll see, I'll probably fail that. I'm very good at rolling 1s and 2s when a 3 is required. I forgot to mention the wee honey observer for the artillery. And then in support, 2 platoons of armoured cars, 1 Humber and 1 Daimler patrol. So this could be quite a tricky one, folks. I never seem to have much luck with my grants. I think they're actually a decent tank in mid-war. They've got a lot going for them, especially when they're careful. When they're hard to hit themselves and they can dish out quite a lot of fire. But so far, they've not been the luckiest for me, and they're tanks that really need a bit of luck because of that 3 tanks to platoon and 5 up last stand. So anyway, folks, there's the Brits. The mid-war Panzer III is rated as careful, confident veteran with the 3+ last stand and a 3+ remount. So it's got all the soft skills, as I call them, that you'd want for a really elite unit. Front armour is good at 5, side armour is okay at 3, top armour 1. It's got fairly typical mobility with tactical of 10 and terrain of 12 and cross-country dash of 18 inches, 3+ cross-check, which is fairly typical for a medium tank. But here's where you're into all kinds of options. You've got lots of choices for the main weapons. You can have a short 7.5 centimetre, a short 5 centimetre, or a long 5 centimetre, and they're all pointed accordingly, with the short 75 being the most expensive. Now that weapon has an anti-tank of 9, rate of fire 2, anti-tank of 9, firepower 3 and a heat rule, which means you ignore distance, long range that is, for calculating the defensive armour of the target. The target doesn't get a +1 to its armour save for long range, and that's the benefit of the heat rule. And it's anti-tank 9, which is good for mid-war. The short 5 centimetre, rate of fire 2, anti-tank 8, so that's not so good. Firepower 4, once again not so good, but it's affordable in terms of points, because when you start adding on weapons such as the short 75 or the long 5, which is rate of fire 2, anti-tank 9, firepower 4, then the cost of these units really starts to add up. So it can be a bit of a challenge getting the points together that you're going to be happy with to give you the flexibility, the options that you want to tackle a range of targets. So there you go, that is the long and the short of it for Panzer IIIs in mid-war. The Grant is rated as careful, confident, trained. It's got a 5+ last stand, which isn't very good, and a remount of 3+, which is much better. Front armour 5, side armour 4, top armour 1. Mobility is pretty much the same as a medium tank, but it has got a 4+ cross check. It's got 2 weapons, a 75mm and a 37mm. The 75mm rate of fire 2, anti-tank 9, firepower 3. It's forward firing and has smoke. The 37mm is rate of fire 2, anti-tank 7, firepower 4, and has a secondary weapon rule, which means if it's firing at the same time as the main gun, it's going to fire rate of fire 1 and a penalty of 1 as well. But it can target other, shoot at other targets, I should say. Now these guys come in platoons of 3, so that 5+ last stand can make them a little bit tricky to use and to keep on the battlefield. Right folks, we have deployed. I rolled highest to be the nominal attacker, and I chose that side to attack from. The reason being, this, in a defensive sense, this ridge, I can get tanks, or in this case tanks, I decided not put my tank guns there, but tanks up on that ridge and give really good fields of fire across here. So obviously Brian has to choose the other side. So in terms of objectives, I put one here. I didn't want to put it there because it's closer to my deployment zone and my reserves, but it's a lot of buildings. Might be good if my infantry can shift, but I don't think my infantry will be able to free themselves up. And then I put one over here, so they're at least really quite far apart. And then Brian has put one here, as far forward as possible, and there as far forward as possible. Now what I've got on the table is my HQ for my grants, anti-tank guns, infantry, artillery. Oh, and the Humber armoured cars. So in reserves there's 2 platoons of grants. The Observer, couldn't get them on, unfortunately, and the Daimler patrol. And then on table for Brian is the short 50s and the company HQ for the Panzer IIIs, the Grenadiers, the Observer, the Nebs, and one armoured car patrol that I think is probably going to just keep an eye on that objective. So we now have to roll off to see who goes first, and whoever does go first will not be firing any artillery. In this game, you know, there's 2 platoons or 2 batteries of artillery squaring up against each other here. Whoever gets first shot may be able to deliver a telling blow, but just come down to the dice, folks. So we'll come back, we'll roll off to see who's going to go first, and we'll come back at the end of the first turn. Turn 1, and the player going first is the Germans. So there's not much going to happen this turn. They can't fire, and there's a whole lot of gone to ground nastiness sitting over there, so it makes no sense to charge out with tanks. So Brian's moved the armoured cars just over here. He's thinking, keep them out of sight, no point in sitting in the open, just stay where they can intervene. And his tanks he's moved behind this ridge, which is a good firing position again, though it is a little bit blocked by that hill. However, he can advance around it, he can fire from it. So that's going to be it. There's not going to be any shooting, folks. We're giving you another very boring turn 1, but it would be imprudent to do otherwise, I think. British turn 1, the infantry moved up, tried to follow me because I would prefer to be further up here before digging in. I want to be digging in front of the objective if at all possible. The armoured cars dashed behind this wood. The HQ for the grants also moved out with a dash and a follow me, successful one this time, behind this hill. There is a possibility of some shooting from these guys over here, but it wouldn't be very many shots getting into range, and they would have to expose themselves to this danger. So I'm happy enough to make that move, and I'm widening my fire base, whatever you want to call it. And then in terms of shooting, it was just down to these 25 pounders, and as I've said before and at the start of this game as well, whoever goes second in these meeting engagements can get the jump with the artillery, and they did, and they managed to kill a neb. I keep wanting to call these wesps because I use wesps so much. So that's aimed down to re-rolling successful hits already. They're going to have to unpin and then give some effective retaliation, or the 25 pounders may well have won the artillery duel. So over to Brian for his turn 2, and remember, still no reserves yet. German turn 2. They didn't unpin, guys. I'll just stick a marker down for them. They didn't unpin, and Brian thought, well, let's move them forward out of the ranged in marker because it was a bit further back to avoid the houses, but he can't move forward. So they're just going to have to take one for the team. The armoured cars have kept shimmying around, but more importantly, he's got a bit of a nasty threat here on this objective. he dashed to get there, so there's not going to be any shooting, but I was suddenly feeling a little bit exposed over here. So British turn 2. As you can see, my adventurous Grants, who I was thinking about maybe putting a threat down on that objective, I've decided that they need to support these guys, especially because they did not dig in. They could be machine gunned to bits next turn, but I've also got these anti-tank guns to help protect them. These guys dashed, didn't manage a successful follow me. The armoured cars, I'm just keeping them where they are. They've anti-tank 5, so they can tickle these guys in the side if they get the chance, but I'm just going to keep them out there for the moment, and they'll stick their noses out when those tanks have got something else to worry about. So that just left some shooting from the artillery. And all the way over, as you can see, there are 2 chances to hit, got one. Had to reroll successful saves and it wasn't successful. Firepower passed, so there's only 1 gun left. They'll be on a check next turn. So Brian won't have to worry about what's he going to do with his artillery from next turn. Possibly. German turn 3. These guys didn't unpin, but they didn't run away. No reserves. So in terms of movement, these armoured cars are going off. I'm thinking they might want to try and be a nuisance for those anti-tank guns if and when this duel takes place. Brian's placed himself in a position where he's in the lee of the hill, so my anti-tank guns and my tanks can't see him at the moment. My tanks will have to move to get the jump, and I'm out of range with direct fire from these guys. So here he's in a position to do some machine gunning, but as I was going to ground and his dice weren't that very good, he got 2 hits, and I managed to jump them off to these 2 here. The one in the building failed its save. Fortunately it was the one in the building, so mistaken target was quite useful, and the firepower wasn't passed. The other one saved. So that's it really for shooting from the Germans. But things will start to hot up soon, because there will be some reserves and another platoon of long barrel Panzer IIIs, or maybe some Marders, especially coming in here, will certainly shake things up. British turn 3, and they got reserves on, guys. Apologies in advance, Brian. Now they've kind of slipped off the end there, but they're on top of that ridge. That's the firing position I was hoping to get. These moved over from behind the hill, and these guys never dug in again. The armoured cars, I've kind of shimmied around a little, but I didn't want to stick their noses out because I was worried that Brian's tanks could pull back out of line of sight of my tanks and shoot up my armoured cars. Now, in terms of shooting, we'll start with the 25 pounders. They ranged in again. Well, sorry, they were already ranged in. They rolled to hit again. Only 1 dice. It can be really a bit tricky when you're trying to hit one last surviving gun. And if you don't, and it unpins, guaranteed it will come back and haunt you. But he made his saves this turn, so it's okay. It got hit, but made successful reroll saves. But over here it didn't quite go so well, and I think it's probably going to mean Brian's on the back foot now, and he'll be happy to make me come get him. The 2 tanks at the front were destroyed by fire from these guys. And one of them, the one here, it survived a 37mm hit from the HQ platoon, but then took another 2 hits, one of which it saved from the platoon on the ridge, and that finished it off. And that 3+ firepower for the main gun is very effective, folks. So there's only 1 left in that platoon. I think Brian will be doing the Brave Sir Robin here and running them away, and I don't blame him, to be honest, which means he's still got some really good reserves, and I don't have a lot of tanks, but it's going to be tricky for him to push on an attack at the moment, and that is often the case when you stick your neck out first in these meeting engagements. But if you don't stick your neck out, you sure as hell are not going to get a win. It might just end up as a long boring draw, but we'll try and avoid that, folks. German turn 4. Motivation. The Neb does not want to unpin, but at least wants to stick around. The Panzer III didn't run away. And then in terms of movement, these guys with a cross-country dashing and successful follow me managed to get behind that ridge. And then Brian's pulled these guys back. He was going off to see if he could annoy some anti-tank guns, but he's got to think about this now. And that means no shooting this turn. Oh, sorry, no reserves this turn. That's why there's no shooting. 2 dice for reserves, but nothing came in. He's still got 3 Marders. He's 4 better Panzer IIIs and some armour cars. So there's still a hell of a lot on the table for me to deal with, but he certainly cannot be on the front foot with just 3 tanks. British turn 3 now, let me think. There's no motivation to speak of, but I did get reserves again, folks. 1 platoon, and they came on here and moved in behind that hill. The HQ just tacticaled up. These guys dashed up. No need for a follow me, they're kind of where I really need them to be. Oh, excuse me. The infantry dashed up into some cover and bulletproof cover. The armour cars dashed around, keep themselves behind this terrain so they can stay on the ground. And I'm starting to move up the anti-tank guns. They're quite vulnerable in the open, but they're going to do me nothing sitting back there. So in terms of shooting, there wasn't very much because I can't see very much. This guy got hit again and made his 2 saves again. And this is where, this is why I really want to kill him. It's a bit of a waste firing 4 guns at one. But imagine it unpins and then lands on these unprotected anti-tank guns. It could kill a couple of them, or it could pin my infantry and stop them moving forward, One artillery piece can be quite nasty. Maybe I shouldn't bother, but every time I've left them alone, they've kind of over-delivered, shall we say. German turn 5. Didn't unpin again, but didn't run away. The surviving Panzer III also didn't run away, and 3 dice but only 1 reserves. And Brian's brought his Marders on here. This is actually a good anchor position for this whole flank. He's kept the Marders back from the front edges, close enough to be able to blitz onto that hill. And if they blitz with them successfully, they could put a hell of a lot of fire, really nasty fire, into my advancing tanks. So he's kind of got a counter for me right away. So the only other thing that happened was the armour cars pulling back to here. So he's keeping his head down. The excitement never stops, folks. Let's see if I can do anything daft or exciting myself. British turn 5. So in terms of motivations, nothing to worry about. In terms of reserves, 1 reserve came on. And it's the Daimler armour car section. As you can see, they're moving off in support of this platoon of Grants. They both failed follow me's, incidentally. Then here the infantry kept moving forward and failed to follow me too. He's saying, come on lads, and they're like, we quite like it in here actually. The Humber armour cars have moved up in support, and then I've moved all these guys up into hull down positions along the crest of that hill. That means these guys will get the jump on me, but at least I'll have some protection, and unless of course they shoot and scoot back. And these guys are moved up into range of this ridge. In terms of shooting, I tried to kill the Panzer II observer with these guys, needing 6s and 7s and 8s, nearly, but no hits. And then this guy got hit again, which is quite consistent rolling to hit, but he's consistently rolling 5s and 6s for his saves, so he's staying around. It's all becoming very Mexican standoff here. Somebody's going to have to stick their neck out. Brian's turn 6. In terms of motivation, unpinned, didn't run away. The other Panzer III didn't run away either. In terms of reserves, 4 dice, no 5s or 6s, so only one platoon came on, and it's the long 50s, and Brian's really having to think about defending this objective. It's a bit of a pain in the backside for him, but he has to put something substantial to stop my guys from just rolling up to that, and the armoured cars won't cut it. He has put that platoon over there. Those walls are very, very good protection. They're tall terrain. He tried to do a blitz and failed. The plan was to blitz, 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 which is quite a lot of dice rolls, but you know, if even the majority of them went up, it would be fine, but these guys really need to go up and then shoot and scoot, obviously. It didn't happen, so he's just left them where they are. That really just left these guys, and they managed to range in first attempt, but re-rolling hits against careful guys is quite tricky. You've only got one hit, so that's enough to pin, and the guy made a save, so there's no kills, but these guys are going to have to stay under that next turn, maybe dig in, maybe pull back the way if they don't unpin, but going forward's tricky because of where the ranged in marker is, because it's in front of them. So I'll have decisions to make there. So Brian has just got 3 armoured cars to come on. Next turn I'll be bringing on my observer, and we have to find a way to break each other down, because I don't think we've actually got anything really substantial in terms of an attack going yet. British turn 6. So in terms of reserves, the last one came on automatically, and it's perched up on a hill. That's the observer. Oh, sorry, these guys unpinned, and needing a 3 to dig in, they got a 2. Uh-oh. I just have to hope that they're not a hit. In terms of movement, as you can see, there's movement towards this ridge. I'm using it to hide myself just now, but I don't know. Brian's got plenty of options for next turn, but I did keep these guys still and left them gone to ground. So if he pops up and doesn't pop back, he's not going to have many hits on these guys. Over here, everything has just moved up, keeping in cover at the moment, because to be honest, there's a horrible amount of open ground to cross to get to that objective. In terms of shooting, it was finally missed. That's the first turn the 25 pounders have actually missed an ebb. It hit him, but he saved quite comfortably. And then the 6 pounders, at the moving rate of fire, because they dug in, they might as well have a go. Couple of chances to get him on a 7, but didn't quite get the 7s. So not much in the way of shooting from me this turn. Just a bit of a conundrum for Brian to decide what he wants to do here. Is he going to hold his ground? Is he going to come out and attack me? Let's see what he does. Oh, and his large reserves all arrive, which is 3 armour cars. German turn 7. In terms of motivation, oh dear, he ran away in the end, just when he was starting to do something. In terms of reserves, the last reserves come on, and Brian's just keeping them back here. A bit of support for there. It's a bit too crowded over here to be hanging about that wood, and he's got every reason to expect artillery to come down here too. So he's keeping them here. These guys take on the ground. These guys went for a blitz again and failed. That HQ and the individual all passed though. Brian had a particular purpose in mind. He was hoping to shoot and scoot back, which he did, but the idea was to get rid of that threat, and he did it pretty damn well. The 75's got 3 out of 4 hits, which is quite good going, and the short also got a hit. This guy here ended up bailed. Guy in the end, the other 2 ended up very dead. That's going to stop me coming around and doing something to those poorly armoured martyrs on the side, which is what I was hoping for, but you've got to be aggressive, and sometimes you break a few eggs to make that omelette. And that's it really for shooting. It's quite successful for him in a small way, but still very much a Mexican standoff for both of us at the moment. British turn 7. Now this was a turn that had so much potential. First of all, These guys tacticaled forward, and that got them into line of sight and range of the Marders. Oh, sorry, he ran away. That armour carry remounted, but he ran away. Now, the Grants didn't do anything either here or there. There's too much open ground for me to cross there just now. The infantry had also stayed put. Right, so in terms of shooting, these guys, they needed 6s. In fact 7s actually, because of the going to ground. They didn't get any hits, didn't even get close, but more importantly, the observer up there could range in with a 25 pounders onto these top armour 0 guys. I got 2 1s and a 2. I needed a 4. So no going there. And then the infantry tried an assault from here. 2 bases, that's all that could get in, coming round here. Anti-tank rifle and the platoon commander. And it was a shambles. They managed to get between them 1 hit, and that was just from the platoon commander. This guy was pretty rubbish too, but he did eventually manage to kill 1 anti-tank rifle, forcing these guys eventually to break off. But it was a fairly pathetic assault on both sides, but the right outcome for Brian. He's still holding his position, but he has to consider what to do about these guys and the artillery coming in. So I may still be able to push forward. Brian's turn 8. So these guys all stayed put. He tried to blitz them because he got a longer range than me. He was going to move them out, start shooting at me, forcing me to come out of cover if I wanted to return the fire. But he failed his blitz. However, he passed a blitz on the Marders on the single tank, but failed it on the commanders, which would have been handy to get. So they blitzed up, and even though these guys were going to ground, he still managed to get 1 hit, 1 kill. So that's on the HQ troop. But then he failed 2 shooting scoots. So they're sitting up there with all of that and all of that, and potentially the artillery as well to come back at him. That's always a danger when you try the Fritz move, as we call it. If you don't get that shooting scoot, you can be sticking your nose out, but you have to try. Sometimes you don't get the right outcome, but you have to do the right things. British turn 8. In terms of movement, everything was kind of where it needed to be for this turn. These guys tried to dig in, but didn't. I've not managed to dig in. I've either got blunt spades or really big rocks underfoot. Then in terms of shooting, so it was pretty much straight onto shooting. This was a critical bit, and as you can see, it didn't go well for the Marders. These guys with 4 main gun dice and 2 37 mils managed to get 3 hits out of 4, which is pretty devastating, but it only left 1 dead and 2 bailed. Then these guys fired and managed to get a kill, but it was only via a double bail from a 37mm. The 75s didn't get anything, so it probably evened out. And then I just fired every single one of these. I could have split the fire between that survivor and them, but I thought, no, get rid of the Marders. And I got 3 hits. So the end guy was just 1 definite pass firepower, 2 would have been bails. The pass firepower was enough. It was a goner. And then the artillery failed to range in again. I was aiming here to try and get these guys, so I had no luck there. So I'm getting a bit of movement, which is good. Not so good for Brian. I don't think he's going to square up to me here, but we'll see what he does next turn. German turn 9. Now it's turn 9, folks, so we're quite a lot into the game, but it's not been a lot of time compared to other games because a lot of the turns nothing much happened. So in this turn, first of all, these guys shooted and scooted, and then a couple of them moved to get into range. So they're out with 24 inches, but within 28 of those grants. They need 7s to hit though, but he's making me aware that there is a risk to them now. These guys sped away behind here, and then he's decided he's going to try and bring his infantry over to hold that, whilst that may potentially free up these guys. and these guys here can look after this objective. Better that than just sitting about and watching me do things. But we'll see, we'll see. In terms of shooting then, it was just the Panzer IIIs here. And they didn't get any 6s, never mind any 7s this turn, but they're in a position now to make me think, do I move or do I come forward? No. But it's going to be hard for me to progress down that flank. British turn 9. So in terms of movement, most of it was here. Moving up, using this as cover, but it's quite difficult to get around. You can only go around the sides, which could expose you to danger, to successful shooting and scooting and blitzing and things. The 6-pounders moved up 2 inches so they could keep progressing. And then over here I've just stayed put. And in terms of shooting, these guys managed to get one of these infantry. The artillery ranged in on the 3rd attempt, but at least they got a hit, which means it was that guy there he saved, but they're pinned. And that was, it's always a danger with this approach. They may stay pinned, and then they're kind of in between objectives. But Brian wants to try and release these guys. And that was about it for me, folks. So, quickly over to Brian for his turn. Turn 10. This guy here, he's constantly checking, by the way, but not running away. The infantry unpinned, and as you can see they've moved over. Tried to follow me, failed. So he's out of hard cover, they're in hard cover, they're out. 1 or 2 they may be under the template as well, but Brian's just charge. He's been trying to move that observer out of the woods, but he's stuck. Then over here they just sat, and they managed to get a hit. Remember, these guys are only a platoon of 3, but I made my save. Their front armour is 6 at range, so they're an annoyance to me just now, unless one or either of us has great or bad luck, depending on your point of view. And that was it really for Brian this turn. He's just trying to move his assets around before I managed to get into position to do something with mine. British turn 10 was mostly about movement. As you can see, these are all moving around. I'm right in the danger zone now, so you can see I've used a smoke barrage, which was successful, I'm pleased to say. I thought about using a smoke barrage here, like dashing them out and doing a smoke barrage, but you could still get up and, you know, with Sat Attack 9 you could do a bit of damage. You could get close enough. For me to be close enough to contest that objective, he could be close enough to contest and shoot me back, even at a penalty. Needing 4 shots on 5s. My guy's been reluctant. I've decided I'm going to try and pin these guys as much as possible whilst pushing on there. The anti-tank guns have kept moving them up, trying to move around that low terrain that's in front of them here. They tried some shots at the infantry crossing the road, but no hits. But I'm moving them up as support against any flank attacks from these guys. General turn 11. He's staying. In terms of movement, these guys got over with a successful follow me. They're now around that objective. It's a risky one, but firefighting, sometimes that's what it's all about, because a blitz brings these guys over here. A dash, cross country dash brings them over here, which means they can start to intervene against these tanks. That's a lot of decent anti-tank. These guys just crossed into the wood because they need a bit of cover. There's going to be some tanks pretty close to them. If they were in the open, they would probably get shot up. In there, they stand a decent chance. So no shooting, but some really important manoeuvring. British turn 11. These guys have come out. The opportunity's staring them in the face now. These guys all moved up. The 6-pounders stay put. And then in terms of shooting, over here they survived quite well. They got lots and lots of hits, only lost 2. So they're there now. If Brian can dig them in, they might hold off, you never know. They've got some armour cars and support over there. Then over here, these guys took a bit of a pasting, but one's still alive. The company commander's just bailed, And the observer actually got 2 bases running in to try and capture him. He got 3 hits on them and killed them both. That ended the assault. Otherwise, it would have been really bad, but he's still alive, guys. He could still be there next turn. And the wee observer's doing his thing. He would have to have broken off if they'd have got in, because he is an independent team. So, the guys took a pasting, but these guys are a little bit exposed now, as you can see. And Brian is still, well, he's not contesting. I don't know if an independent team contests, but I am not at the objective. That's the important thing, here or here. So we've hit midnight, we've hit 12 on the turn counter clock, folks. So in that turn, these guys didn't unpin, but they did dig in. These guys stayed put. He got back in, by the way, and then these have moved out just to put a presence around the objective for the risk of assaults. They are putting themselves in danger, but it's getting to that time. So in terms of shooting, he took 2 shots through the wood at the tanks. You could see, missed, and then shooted and scooted back out. These guys got 5 out of 8 hits at long range on these careful guys. You notice there's no markers of any kind on them. He took 2, passed 1, managed to get another one up to a bale, which the firepower was failed, and then he passed all 3 saves. So they really effectively passed 5 saves between them, which was unexpected, and it leaves the objective in some degree of danger still. So I'll see if I can try and close in and take an objective, folks. British turn 12. Well, that was a very, let's say, a turn of 2 halves. First of all, in terms of movement, there wasn't very much. Tried to move these all into the woods, but the cross-check isn't very good. Only 1 got in. Infantry moved up a bit. They stayed put. Tried to shoot and scoot at the end of their shooting, but didn't work. These guys charged on up. They manoeuvred to get shots on the armoured cars. So in terms of shooting, over there they managed to kill the anti-tank armoured car, you know, the one with the SPZB, blah, 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 blah. Over here, nothing from shooting. And then over here, no new smoke markers. These all fired. He didn't have any to shoot at. He tried to shoot him and was unlucky, got no hits. He's fired, they've fired, and all that's happened is one of them bailed out. The company commands bailed out. That's it. Over here, however, was a really successful assault by the Grants. They only took 1 hit back and managed to motivate to keep going forward, and between them they killed 4 bases in 2 turns of assault, so that's quite good. Quite effective. So that objective is now up for grabs. I've actually consolidated that in the wrong way. Need to keep everybody within 4 inches of that objective. So Brian's going to have to go firefighting again. He's got juicy targets over here, but important targets over there. Let's see if Brian can keep it going. German turn 13. Is it going to be lucky 13? Well, it's for him because he got back in. In terms of movement, they moved over to get shooting. The armoured cars moved over towards the objective. In terms of shooting, he did rather well. He managed to get himself with a shot 75, a kill and a bale on the company HQ. These guys here tried shooting there, but no luck. These guys, 4 shots, managed to get 1 hit and 1 kill. And then these guys moved over just to keep the objective alive. So let's see if I can close in. If I kill those 2, it'll be game. So turn 13 for the Brits. In terms of movement, 2 tanks moved around the side, stayed still. He got back in and stayed still. Infantry edged up a little bit with the potential of putting assaults in against bailed out things and the observer. These stayed put, but the armoured cars moved up, and then in shooting the armoured cars got 1. These guys only ended up managing a double bale on him with 4 75s and 2 37s. But the fact is he's bailed out, that wins the game. But over here, in terms of shooting, once again, all the shooting got in here. There's 4 dice of anti-tank guns, 2 from him. let me see, 4 from there. He still just got bailed out in the end. But then the assaults went in and it was quite brutal, to be honest. There was lots of ones rolled for saves. He got clobbered. He got hit 4 times, rolled 2 ones. He got hit, let me think now. He got hit once but rolled a 1, and that ended it. Because he broke off, sorry. He ran away. So the Brits actually took both objectives in the end. So we'll go over to our recap, folks. So there you go, folks. It was a victory for the British. It kind of looked on the cards when that initial move by the Germans got hammered, and it's always a risk making the early move in this game. But if you don't make a move, you can't really be sure of winning it. You know, these fair fight missions, you have to go for it. And even then, for the British, it came down to a failed shoot and scoot from the Germans to actually get some forward momentum going. If those Marders had been able to get back behind the hill, they were going to be starting to take some shots from artillery and from 6-pounders and so on, but it was still going to be able to delay me perhaps sufficiently to get a draw. It was a long game in terms of turns, but not so much in terms of time. A lot of those turns were very quick, as you could probably guess from watching the game. A lot of them were over in minutes, so it wasn't as long a game to play, so we could definitely get that one played out to a finish, as we could see a definite path towards a victory. Other games, we've said, okay, we're still in a position to cancel each other out in these kind of fair fight missions, but this one, I'm glad to say we got it played to a win. Now, let's maybe even hear your own thoughts on this, guys. The tactic Brian had of trying to release his Panzer IIIs by moving his infantry. What do you think? Would it have been better to keep those infantry in place? Or was it the right thing to move them? Remember, his Panzer IIIs, when they arrived, were incredibly unlucky against the HQ section of the Grants. He should have destroyed them, leaving just 3 Grants there. And that may well have been enough. They could then have turned around and supported the infantry on the objective. And the infantry on the objective, in reasonable circumstances, they could have taken an assault and the British could have missed, but we didn't in this game, and the British could have broken off. So they maybe could have bought a couple of turns to then turn that Panzer III platoon around. So I don't think it was a bad move. Didn't have the right outcome, but as I've said before, if you do the right thing and don't get the right outcome, well, don't beat yourself up too much about it, you know. But your own thoughts will be welcome on that, folks, so stick it down in the comments below. Anyway, that's us. Don't forget Valley Gaming. That should be probably next week, maybe the week after. But subscribe to them, hit their bell button, and you will definitely catch it. And if you hit our subscribe button and bell button, you'll definitely catch our next game. So thanks for watching, folks. Thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you on the next one.